So I have a brand new pump, very similar to the old one, just doesn't have a leak. I got new lines, new fittings, all sorts of stuff. I have a couple of parts here. On RVs, there's what's called local water, and then you have your gravity port to fill your water tank. This is going to go in there so I can fill the tank. And then this is your local water source, which connects to a hose, which already has the pressure. So this would go somewhere over here. Could probably put it under the sink or whatever. And then there's just a valve, a one-way valve between the tank and the rest of the system. So when you have pressure there, it can't backfeed and fill and overflow your tank and do all that stuff. So ideally, like an automatic one-way check valve would be ideal. But since they didn't have that, and I just want to get something in there for now, I ended up getting a ball valve. It'll work fine. It'll just mean I'll have to remember one extra step when hooking up the local water supply until I get a check valve to throw in there. Got a bunch of LED bulbs I had laying around to replace the ones in the ceiling. So there's a lot less energy draw. It'll stop popping breakers and whatever. So the way that these RV pumps work is there's actually a pressure switch in there. So it'll pump up until it reaches the pressure it's set at, and then once you actually start turning on the water and using it and dropping the pressure, it'll automatically turn back on again. So now that I have the water system mostly in place, minus the inlets, kind of air out the lines, but as you notice, as the water pressure drops, it automatically kicks back on. There's a lot of air on this side because that's actually the side with the water heater, so it's got to work all that stuff out. But that's working. I just put in some LED bulbs there, and shoved one in this porch light here. So we actually have some light out here to work with. So we're plugged into what's essentially shore power, and we have an outside porch light on. We have two bulbs there and two bulbs over there. So with the LED bulbs I just put in, it's super efficient. It's not really drawing much for current. So I could run quite a bit off a small inverter for a long time for these ceiling lights. With this power here that's coming in, I'm going to have to add a splitter so I can choose between what I can plug into or just an inverter if I want the 120 and I'm not able to find an outlet to plug into. So I'm getting the, this is the gravity feed for the water hooked up. It's hooked up, I just need to caulk around it and get some self-tappers long enough to pop it in there. And this is the hose connection where it actually creates pressure in the system if you have the option. The hose connection actually comes out down here through the wall. I gotta caulk all this up, seal it up, and that actually just goes straight into the water system. And this box is built kind of weird, so I think I'm just gonna end the bench like right here and create like a box over it, so this can be more utility storage, water, whatever, because I have to have the gravity feed above the level of the thing. Just, you know, gravity. I'll cut off a little bit of the bench there, but I could even just elevate that part of the bench to create a seat for a table here, which might actually work better because this bench is kind of low for any sort of counter space. I could literally just, this is on a hinge that closes down, but I just got it screwed to the wall for now. I could just unscrew that, move it over to cover that space and come down, and then build a bench on that side. And that would be perfect. That would work just fine. I've installed a diesel heater, and that works just fine. It runs off this battery bank. This is an attempt at a battery isolator. I found out that's what that was for. I didn't install this, but here it is. This side goes to the main vehicle battery. This side goes to the auxiliary or house batteries. Positive signal goes into here to connect these two circuits. So the smart way, if they did it right, would be to attach this to a keyed on power source. So it would basically only be connecting this circuit while the vehicle is running. I got to build a box, do something. I want to get a couple of truck batteries, just line up 3 or something. These are kind of old, but they work fine. The exhaust, there's actually a box on the outside here. And where that is on the outside, I got to add some trim, like seal it up and whatever. But on the outside where that is, this is literally just a metal door. So it already has like an insulating plate right here. So while it was running full blast, I was able to put my hand and hold it here. This thing does a great job of dissipating heat, so I'm not worried about it. Probably gonna make a flange for here, just so I can make it look a little cleaner and maybe point it down so rain and stuff doesn't get in it. This battery box, it's a slide out tray. The battery's ancient, doesn't really work. So I'm not even using it because I want the batteries inside to stay warm and not freeze. And I still have yet to get the propane filled. So the gravity feed is just a hose stuck in there, and it's slowly filling this up, going into the tank. And that's what that looks like from the outside. So just got back from the hardware store, and I have now gotten all of the stuff I need to connect the sink all the way down through the P-trap and everything across and into that hole there for the tank. So now I just got to do that. Got some caulking and stuff, kind of seal it down. And then I also got myself some self-taparoonies to do the fittings on the outside for the water inlets. And this is way too much of a restriction. I kind of figured that. It works just crazy slow. So I need to probably heat this up so I can get this fitting out and then get a much larger inlet for this tank here. Okay, so I have it running on the hose right now. So this is the hose hookup, and my water pressure is currently coming from this hose. I haven't done anything with hooking up the pump, but I have a sink in. I still have to finish caulking around it and everything. So the sink works, it drains, comes down through this P-trap down here, and goes into the waste tank over there. I didn't want it too close to that back wall because that valve is there, and I don't want anything interfering with it getting to that valve. So this box in here is just going to be kind of utility stuff. And then for these, you need to add a vent that, it's usually a T that goes all the way up to the ceiling, but since I have stuff in the way, I can't just go straight up. So I'm going to have to add something that goes probably around here and then up somewhere, just anywhere out. So if you don't put a vent in there, there's nowhere for the air to escape as the fluid comes in. So the bubbles actually have to travel up and out here to get exchanged for fluid. So it'll drain really slow, if it does drain at all. So I've just installed this little heater. It is self-regulating. It runs off 120. So I've mounted it right here and just plugged it into the little outlet that I have behind it. So it's kind of out of the way. I still have another outlet on top where I can run crap over here if I want to. But this will be just automatic, regulate itself, turn on and off as needed instead of just having something constantly running. And it comes with a remote. So that's kind of nice. I can control it on the fly. So I'll have that. I'll have the diesel heater. And I also have, if the engine's running, the vents and stuff on there. So redundancy. Redundancy is key. Especially if like it's the middle of winter, it's 3 a.m. and something goes out, you don't want to be screwed with no heat. So this is literally like not secured at all. It's literally sitting on a sander and just kind of like propped up over there. But this is kind of what I'm going for, is I want to put a counter space here. It'll hide all the stuff underneath. I obviously need to build all the framework and supports and everything. And this will actually be what helps brace in and hold the fridge here. Hide the battery bank, the diesel heater, all that stuff, and then I'll have a nice long counter space by the window. There's an outlet here So if I want to use that second outlet, I'm just going to have to cut a small hole here to run cords up and down. But I want to hide that outlet because the fridge is going to be plugged into one of those. And it's going to look a lot nicer and cleaner. Once I build the framework for this and get it all secured and everything, then I can actually overlay it with some sort of surface to make it look really nice. Between here and here, there's still way more than enough walkway and space, so it's not going to feel like too enclosed or claustrophobic or anything, and that counter space is going to be just fantastic. The fridge I'm going to put this way, unlock it and open it, and get at whatever you want in there. So I want to put it this way. I don't want to put it towards the front because I need to have access to the back. In the back here is controls for 12 volt, 120, or the propane, and I need to be able to switch between them. You can't run them all at once or it'll damage it. And yes, I could take this control box off. It's just wires, and mount the controls elsewhere and have the fridge facing forward. But this way I don't have this heat exchanger directly against the wall, and it's less of a fire hazard. It's actually got some space, so I just think it's safer and better this way. I have to notch out this corner just a little bit for this little cable bundle to run up. Normally you would have a control panel that would have a power switch for your water pump. This is all just completely temporary, obviously, until I actually build everything. But I have a insulated harness running under and up to the water pump. So now when I turn the water on and it drops pressure, that pump will kick back on. And it will give me a continuous flow of water. So now that that's on and I actually have pressure, I can go ahead and see if this hot water heater works. So I think the pilot light might be clogged, but I heated up the thermocouple manually and got the water heater running. So let's see how well it works. It might unclog itself after it goes through a heat cycle or two, but I might just have to pull it off and clean it out. So inside the pilot light, there's this little tiny hole inside this little orifice piece here, and that gets clogged very easily because there's low pressure and it's a very tiny hole. So now that I have cleaned that out, I've confirmed that we do have propane flowing and everything. Once I put this back together, everything should work perfectly fine. So the hot water heater is definitely working. It goes through its coils and stuff and then exhausts its way out here. So let's go inside. We can check on thermal and show you guys that there actually is hot water. There's a tiny little drip coming from this valve, so I need to get a new valve for that, but not a super huge deal. So the hose here just popped off and splurted water everywhere, just emptied the whole water heater. Everything down here is now flooded, so that's wonderful. I think what happened is either the hose clamp wasn't tight enough, which I think it was, but I think the plastic hose here got too hot and kind of softened up and allowed itself to work its way out. So I'm gonna have to replace this with a metal hose. Just probably some copper tubing or something out a ways, and then connect it down to the plastic farther away where the heat can actually dissipate and it won't get soft. Any second now it should actually open that valve. There we go. And the stove works. And this stove actually has an option to turn off the stove without actually turning off the pilot. So I can leave the pilot light running if I wanted to, and I wouldn't have to go down there and relight it. But I'm going to turn off the pilot light just so that is not going, and I'm not using that gas when I don't need it. So stove works.